Dr. Catherine Reynolds stared at the holographic display until her eyes burned, but the pattern refused to change. 23 stars had gone dark in the past month, each death following a perfect line through space. She discovered the pattern during her regular shift at the Stellar Cartography Division of Earth's Deep Space Monitoring Network. And now, 3 days later, she hadn't left her post. "Kate, you need to sleep," Marcus Webb, her assistant, said from somewhere behind her. She could hear the worry in his voice, but she couldn't look away from the display. "Look at the trajectory, Marcus." She traced the line of dead stars with her finger. "It's too perfect to be natural. Each star dies exactly 72 hours after the previous one. The distance between them is practically mathematical." She pulled up another overlay, this one showing the predicted path. "And if we extend the line?" Marcus's sharp intake of breath told her he finally saw what had kept her awake these past 3 days. The line of extinction pointed directly at the Sol system. "We need to alert the Security Council," he whispered. Kate shook her head. "Already did. They're convening in an hour." She finally turned away from the display, her eyes struggling to focus on her colleague's face. "They think I'm paranoid." The official response was, and I quote, "Stellar death is a natural phenomenon." She pulled up another dataset, this one showing the composition of the dead stars. "But look at this. Each star was stripped of specific elements before its death. Heavy metals first, then hydrogen, then everything else. It's like something's eating them, Marcus, something smart." The laboratory door slid open with a soft hiss, and Director Harrison Walsh strode in, his usually immaculate uniform looking wrinkled. "Dr. Reynolds, the Security Council has moved up the meeting. They want you there now." Kate gathered her data tablets, her hands shaking slightly from too much caffeine and too little sleep. "They finally taking this seriously. Station Gamma just confirmed your findings." Walsh's face was grim. "They've detected energy signatures between the dead stars. Something's moving out there, Doctor. Something big." The journey to the council chambers felt like a dream. Kate had spent the past 5 years in this station, but she'd never seen it so active at this hour. Emergency protocols had been initiated without public announcement. Security teams at every junction, system engineers running diagnostics, and the usually empty observation deck crowded with officers studying the starfield. Inside the chamber, 12 faces stared at her with varying degrees of concern and skepticism. Admiral James Torres, the youngest person ever to achieve his rank, sat at the center. His expression was unreadable. "Dr. Reynolds," he began, "explain to us why we're all awake at 300 hours. Kate connected her tablet to the room's main display. The pattern of dead stars appeared above the table, rotating slowly. "What you're looking at is an extinction event moving through space. 23 stars have died in the past month, each death following a perfect pattern. The energy signatures between these stars suggest deliberate movement." She highlighted the trajectory. "Whatever's causing this is headed directly for Earth. Based on the speed of progression, we have approximately 8 months before it reaches us." "Could this be a natural phenomenon?" Counselor Chen asked, her voice sharp. "Solar systems die all the time." "Not like this." Kate pulled up the compositional analysis. Each star was systematically stripped of resources before its death. The process is too precise, too methodical. This is technology at work, not nature. Admiral Torres leaned forward. "You're suggesting first contact." "I'm suggesting an invasion." Kate met his gaze steadily. "Whatever's coming doesn't care about communication. They haven't responded to any attempts at contact, and they're leaving nothing but dead systems in their wake." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity had always wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now they had their answer, and it was worse than anyone had imagined. "How do we fight something that can kill stars?" Counselor Chen finally asked. Admiral Torres stood, his decision already made. We start by treating this as what it is, a declaration of war. Dr. Reynolds, you'll head up the research division. I want to know everything about how these stars are dying. The rest of you, initiate Protocol Omega. As of this moment, Earth is at war. He paused, looking at each person in the room. And God help us all if we're not ready when they get here. Admiral James Torres stood before the holographic display of the solar system, his expression hard as granite, as he presented humanity's most ambitious military project. The Cradle Defense Initiative isn't just about building weapons. It's about creating a shield 50 light-years deep around Earth. The chamber erupted in protests. Budget directors clutched their tablets. Politicians shouted about resource allocation, and military strategists argued about spreading forces too thin. The cost is astronomical, General Sarah Matthews declared, her voice cutting through the chaos. Converting entire asteroids into battle stations, rebuilding our fleet from the ground up. We're talking about using 3 decades worth of resources in 8 months. Torres didn't flinch. And what's the cost of extinction, General? He manipulated the display, showing the latest data from Dr. Reynolds' team. Another star had gone dark, right on schedule. We're not fighting for profit margins anymore. We're fighting for our right to exist. The room fell silent as the recording of the star's death played out. In 72 hours, a thriving solar system had been reduced to a graveyard of cold rocks orbiting nothing. The defense initiative begins today, Torres continued. I've already ordered the mining fleets to begin asteroid conversion. The orbital shipyards are being retooled as we speak. He paused, looking each council member in the eye. I'm not asking for permission. I'm telling you what needs to be done. Later that evening, Torres found himself in the observation deck of the Lunar Command Center, watching Earth rise over the horizon. Dr. Reynolds joined him, her footsteps echoing in the empty chamber. Bold move, Admiral, she said, standing beside him. The Council's already trying to calculate how to impeach you. Let them try. He turned to face her. Your latest report, the one about the defense platform malfunctions. Tell me what you really think is happening. Kate's expression darkened. The failures aren't random. Someone's accessing the core programming, installing backdoors. These aren't accidents. They're sabotage. How many know about this? Just my team, and now you. She pulled up a data stream on her tablet. The code signatures are unlike anything we've seen. It's as if someone's using technology that shouldn't exist yet. Torres absorbed this, his mind racing through the implications. You think we're already infiltrated. I think something's been watching us for a long time, Admiral. And now that we're building real defenses, she let the thought hang. The Admiral's communication device chirped, and his aide's voice filled the room. Sir, Defense Platform 7 just went dark. All systems, including the backup generators. Torres met Kate's eyes. How many personnel on board? 342, sir. Launch rescue operations. Now. He cut the communication and turned back to the window. Doctor, I need you to head up a new division. Something off the books. Find these infiltrators. Find out how deep this goes. What about my research on the star deaths? Keep it as your cover. But this, he gestured to the data about the sabotage. This could kill us before the main threat even arrives. A flash of light drew their attention. Through the reinforced windows, they watched as emergency vessels streaked toward the stricken defense platform. Its massive form, built from a converted asteroid, was barely visible against the star field. We're running out of time, Kate said softly. Even if we stop the sabotage, 8 months isn't enough to build a defense line that can stop something that killed stars. Torres' reply was interrupted by another alert. This time, the message made his blood run cold. Defense Platform 7 just disappeared. Sir, no explosion, no debris field. It's just gone, along with all rescue vessels in the vicinity. Kate's hands flew over her tablet. Energy signature match. It's the same pattern as the dying stars, just on a smaller scale. She looked up at Torres, her face pale. They're not just coming, Admiral. They're already here, and they're learning about us. Torres straightened his uniform, his decision made. Then it's time they learned what happens when you threaten humanity's cradle. Sound General Quarters. As of this moment, we're at war. The death of Phobos was beautiful in its horror. Mars' largest moon didn't explode or shatter. It simply began to unravel, layer by layer, like a pearl being peeled apart by invisible hands. Dr. Catherine Reynolds watched through the enhanced feed as the moon's matter spiraled into a vortex of light, feeding into the massive ship that had appeared without warning in Mars' orbit. Energy readings are off the scale, Marcus reported, his voice steady despite the terror they all felt. They're converting the entire mass into something. The process is 100% efficient. No waste energy at all. Admiral Torres stood at the command center's main window, his hands clasped behind his back. The massive holographic display showed every detail of the Harvest ship, a construct that defied traditional physics, its surface rippling like liquid metal yet harder than any material humanity had ever encountered. How many? Torres asked. Just this one, sir, for now. Captain Sarah Hayes, their tactical officer, brought up the long-range scans. But we're detecting spatial distortions consistent with their drive signatures. More are coming. The first transmission from the Harvesters arrived as Phobos' last fragments disappeared into their ship. It came through all channels, in perfect English, yet carried an undertone that made everyone's teeth ache. Your solar system has been selected for consumption. Your level of technology makes you worthy of an explanation. We are the Harvesters. We bring order to chaos. Your matter will serve a greater purpose in our quest for universal perfection. Resistance is. Torres cut the transmission with a gesture. Send our response. Kate looked up from her station. Sir, we should analyze their communication method first. There could be. Send. The response. The message was short, broadcast on all frequencies. This is humanity's cradle. You are not welcome here. Leave or be destroyed. The Harvester ship's response was immediate. A beam of energy, the same that had consumed Phobos, lanced out toward the nearest defense platform. But this time, something different happened. The platform's shields, designed using data from Dr. Reynolds' research, didn't just block the beam. They reflected it. The energy splashed back across space, forcing the Harvester ship to take evasive action for the first time in its ancient existence. How? The Harvester's next transmission carried something new. Confusion. Your technology is insufficient. Your understanding is limited. This defense should not be possible. Torres allowed himself a grim smile. Dr. Reynolds, would you like to explain to our guests why their little trick didn't work? Kate stepped forward, addressing the enemy directly. We studied the stars you killed, learned how you break down matter at the quantum level. It's impressive, really. Perfect order in the midst of chaos. But that's your weakness, isn't it? You can't handle disorder. So we created shields that don't just block energy. They randomize it. The Harvester ship launched another attack, this time at multiple platforms simultaneously. Each beam was met with the same result. Chaotic reflection, random dispersion. The perfect order of their energy weapon turned against them. Impossible, the Harvester transmitted. Your species was studied, predicted. This outcome does not match our calculations. That's humanity's first lesson, Torres replied. We don't follow your calculations. We break them. He turned to his tactical officer. Captain Hayes, show them our response to their little moon-eating demonstration. Across the defense line, platforms that had appeared dormant suddenly activated, but instead of traditional weapons, they began broadcasting on all frequencies: music, art, dance, poetry. The chaotic beauty of human culture turned into a weapon against beings that could not comprehend imperfection. The harvester ship's surface began to ripple erratically, its perfect form distorted as it tried to process the flood of human expression. "You cannot stop the harvest," the ship transmitted, but now there was something like fear in its mechanical voice. "We are Legion. We err. We are humanity." Torres cut them off again. "And you just destroyed a piece of our solar system. Now let us show you why that was the biggest mistake in your long, sterile existence." He nodded to Hayes. "All platforms, weapons free. Show them what chaos can do." The space around Mars lit up as humanity launched its first true counterattack, not just with energy and matter, but with the very essence of what made them human: their beautiful, perfect imperfection. Lieutenant Michael "Lucky" Rodriguez wasn't feeling very lucky as he watched 3 more defense platforms dissolve into streams of energy, feeding the ever-growing harvester fleet. His small fighter squadron was all that remained of the outer defense line's rapid response force. "Control, this is Echo Lead," he transmitted, his fighter weaving through debris. "We've lost platforms 20 through 23. The enemy's adapted to our reflection shields. They're using some kind of modulating frequency that." A blast of energy cut through space where his fighter had been a second earlier. Pure instinct had made him roll port, though he couldn't explain why. The targeting computer hadn't even registered the threat. "Lucky, what the hell was that maneuver?" his wing commander demanded. "Pure panic, sir," Rodriguez admitted, continuing his erratic flight pattern. "I'm flying on gut instead of computers. They keep predicting where we should be, so I'm trying not to be there." In the Lunar Command Center, Dr. Catherine Reynolds watched the battle unfold with growing horror. Half the defense line had fallen in less than 6 hours. The harvesters had adapted to their shield technology faster than anyone had predicted, their collective intelligence working to solve the problem like a supercomputer made of living metal. "We need to pull back," General Matthews argued. "Consolidate our forces closer to Earth." Admiral Torres watched the tactical display, his eyes fixed on a single fighter that seemed to be dancing through the battlefield. "Dr. Reynolds, are you seeing this?" Kate was already running analysis on Lieutenant Rodriguez's flight pattern. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "Look at the chaos in his movement. The harvesters can't track him because there's no logic to predict." She pulled up more data streams, her fingers flying over the controls. "Every time we use programmed defense patterns, they adapt and counter. But Rodriguez, he's flying pure instinct. Random course changes, acceleration burns that make no tactical sense. And they can't touch him," Torres finished. "Captain Hayes, get me a channel to all remaining forces." The Admiral's voice echoed through every ship and station still fighting. "All units, this is Torres. Disengage all combat computers. I want every pilot, every gunner, every ship captain flying purely on human instinct. Be unpredictable. Be human." Rodriguez's voice crackled through. "Sir, with all due respect, that's insane. We can't fight without our combat systems." "That's exactly why it'll work, Lieutenant. You just proved it. They can predict our computers, but they can't predict human insanity. Show your fellow pilots how to dance." Across the battlefield, human forces began to change their tactics. Destroyers performed spiral maneuvers that defied standard combat logic. Fighter squadrons broke into chaotic patterns that looked more like a ballet than a military formation. Gunners fired on instinct rather than computer solutions. And for the first time, the harvesters began to miss. Kate watched as the enemy's perfect formation began to show signs of strain. "They're slowing down," she reported. Their responses are becoming delayed. It's like they're processing too much random data. A new harvester transmission cut through the command center. Your combat algorithms have become corrupted. This behavior does not match any known combat doctrine. Explain. Torres laughed. Actually laughed. As he responded, "That's not a combat doctrine you're seeing. That's human nature. We're not following a program. We're not following any pattern at all. We're just being who we are, beautifully, perfectly chaotic." The battle continued to shift. While the defense line was still taking heavy losses, the harvesters' previously perfect efficiency had dropped dramatically. Their attacks, based on predictive algorithms built over millions of years of combat, couldn't adapt to an enemy that refused to be logical. "Sir," Kate called out, her voice urgent, "I'm detecting changes in their ship configurations. They're trying to adapt, but something's wrong. Their surfaces are becoming unstable." Torres watched as the nearest harvester ship's perfect surface began to ripple and distort. "They're not just fighting our weapons," he realized. "They're fighting the very concept of chaos itself, and it's hurting them." He turned to his communications officer. "Get me Rodriguez again. Tell him he just became an instructor. I want every fighter pilot we have learning how to fly drunk through a hurricane. It's time to show these machines what humanity does best. Break all the rules they think they know." The quantum laboratory deep beneath the lunar surface hummed with energy as Dr. Catherine Reynolds initiated the final test of her latest creation. The device, no larger than a coffee cup, contained what might be humanity's greatest weapon. Pure, weaponized chaos. "Quantum state stabilize," Marcus called out from his station. "Ready for power-up sequence." Kate took a deep breath, her hand hovering over the activation switch. The last 3 prototypes had exploded, taking chunks of the lab with them. But this time, something felt different. "Initiating Chaos Engine test done," she announced. "Recording all parameters." The device began to glow, not with any single color, but with a shifting pattern that hurt the eyes to look at directly. It was like watching a rainbow having a seizure, beautiful and wrong at the same time. Admiral Torres watched from behind the safety barrier, his expression intent. They'd lost another defense platform that morning, but his presence here showed where he thought the real battle would be won. "Energy output stable," Marcus reported, wonder in his voice. "Quantum field is, sir, it's actually maintaining a state of controlled randomness. The mathematicians said this was impossible." "The mathematicians never met the harvesters," Kate replied, her eyes fixed on the readings. "They never had to figure out how to weaponize the very thing that makes us human." The device continued its impossible operation, creating a field of pure quantum uncertainty. In the corner, a simple mechanical clock had stopped working, its gears unable to function in an area where cause and effect had become suggestions rather than laws. "How soon can we weaponize it?" Torres asked. Kate turned to face him. "That's the thing, Admiral. It already is a weapon. The Harvester's entire existence is based on perfect order, perfect prediction. This," she gestured to the device, "this is like throwing a wrench into the most perfect machine ever built. It doesn't just disrupt their technology, it disrupts their very nature." Lieutenant Rodriguez chose that moment to enter the lab, still in his flight suit from the morning's combat exercise. "Doc, you've got to see this. We've been running those new combat patterns you suggested." He stopped, staring at the device. "Why does looking at that make me want to throw up and laugh at the same time?" "Because it's wrong," Kate explained, a hint of pride in her voice. "It's something that shouldn't exist. A quantum state that's predictably unpredictable. We've created a paradox and found a way to keep it stable. The harvesters are already adapting to our randomized flight patterns," Torres added. "We need something they can't adapt to. Something that breaks their understanding of reality itself." Kate nodded toward a screen showing the latest battle data. "Their ships are perfect examples of order. Every atom in perfect alignment. Every action calculated to multiple decimal places. But look what happens when they try to process true randomness. The screen showed a harvester ship attempting to absorb a defense platform. But this platform had been modified with an early prototype of Kate's device. The ship's surface had begun to break down, its perfect symmetry disrupted by waves of chaos. "They're not just machines," Kate continued. "They're the ultimate expression of order. And like any system based on perfect order, they're brittle." Rodriguez finished, beginning to understand. "Hit them hard enough, with something they can't predict, and they shatter," Torres concluded. "Doctor, how many of these devices can you make?" Kate's expression was grim but determined. "With the resources of every major laboratory on Earth, maybe 100 in the next month. But Admiral, there's something else you need to see." She led them to another chamber, where a captured piece of a harvester ship was being held in a containment field. The fragment was small, no larger than a dinner plate, but it pulsed with an inner light that seemed to follow its own laws of physics. "We found out why they're really here," Kate said softly. "They're not just consuming stars for energy. They're trying to rewrite the basic laws of the universe. Every system they harvest brings them one step closer to their goal. A universe of perfect, sterile order." Torres stared at the fragment, understanding the true scale of what they were fighting. "Then we're not just defending Earth anymore, are we?" "No, sir," Kate replied. "We're defending the right of chaos to exist, the right of life itself to be unpredictable, imperfect, and free." Rodriguez touched the container holding the chaos engine. "Well then, Doc, I'd say it's time to show them just how imperfect we can be." Operation Slingshot began with a lie. Across the defense line, human ships appeared to falter, their formations breaking apart in what looked like panic and disarray. The harvesters, unable to resist such an obviously vulnerable target, took the bait. "They're moving into position," Lieutenant Rodriguez reported from the lead fighter squadron. His wings were spread wide, each fighter moving in seemingly random patterns that actually followed a complex dance of controlled chaos. "Main fleet is breaking through just like you predicted, Doc." Dr. Catherine Reynolds watched from the command center as the massive harvester ships pushed through the gap in Earth's defenses. The enemy's perfect formation was almost beautiful, their ships moving with a precision that should have been impossible at their scale. "Chaos engines reading nominal," Marcus called out. "All units report ready." Admiral Torres stood at the center of the command deck, his eyes fixed on the tactical display. "Remember, everyone, the plan is there is no plan. The more random we appear, the better this works." He paused, then added, "Initiate Phase 1. What happened next would be studied in military academies for centuries to come. The seemingly scattered human forces suddenly moved as one, but not in any pattern the harvesters could recognize. Civilian mining ships performed complex ballet maneuvers through the battle lines. Cargo vessels transformed into weapon platforms, their holds opening to release clouds of quantum-destabilized particles. And at the center of it all, Rodriguez's squadron led the dance. "Echo Squadron, light M up," he called out. Each fighter activated its miniaturized chaos engine, creating a web of quantum instability that spread between them like lightning. The effect on the harvester ships was immediate and devastating. Their perfect surfaces began to ripple and distort, the quantum uncertainty making it impossible for them to maintain their rigid structure. "Their processing core is struggling," Kate reported, reading the energy signatures. "They can't predict where our ships will be because we don't know where they'll be either. The uncertainty is cascading through their network." A harvester transmission cut through the chaos. "This combat pattern does not compute. Your ships move without logic, without purpose. You will be destroyed." Torres smiled. "That's where you're wrong. Phase 2, all units. The real beauty of Operation Slingshot wasn't just in its military strategy. It was psychological warfare on a scale never before attempted. Every human ship began broadcasting on all frequencies: music, poetry, dance, art. The pure expression of human creativity turned into a weapon. The harvester ship's surfaces writhed as they tried to process the flood of human expression. Their perfect formation began to break down as individual ships struggled to maintain their cohesion. "Sir," Marcus called out, "we're detecting something new. The quantum disruption is spreading between their ships. They're infecting each other with our chaos." Kate's eyes widened as she understood. Of course, their network links them all together. When one ship experiences uncertainty, it spreads the effect to all others. They can't isolate themselves without breaking their collective intelligence. Rodriguez's voice crackled through the comm. "You should see this from out here, Doc. It's like watching a perfect crystal shatter in slow motion. Beautiful and terrifying at the same time." The harvesters made one last attempt to regain control. Their ships began to pulse with energy, trying to burn away the quantum uncertainty through sheer power. But this only made things worse. The energy fed back through their network, amplifying the chaos. "This is impossible." The harvester transmission now carried something new. Fear. "We are perfect. We are order. We cannot be defeated by life." Torres finished for them. "That's your fundamental error. You chose perfect order over the beautiful chaos of living. And now you're learning why that was a mistake." He turned to Kate. "Dr. Reynolds, show them the final movement of our little symphony." Kate activated the command she'd been holding in reserve. Across the battlefield, every chaos engine synchronized in a moment of perfect imperfection. The quantum disruption reached a critical point, and the harvester fleet's perfect formation finally, completely shattered. "Sir," Rodriguez reported, awe in his voice, "they're retreating. The harvesters are actually running away." Torres watched as the enemy fleet broke apart, individual ships fleeing in different directions for the first time in their million-year history. "No," he corrected, "they're not just running. They're experiencing something they've never known before." "What's that, sir?" Kate asked. "Doubt," Torres replied. "And that, Doctor, is the beginning of their end." Dr. Catherine Reynolds stood before the captured harvester fragment, its surface now completely still after weeks of study. The laboratory around her had changed. Gone were the sterile white walls and perfect order. Instead, art covered the walls, music played in the background, and her team had even brought in plants. The fragment seemed to shrink from these displays of life and chaos. "Play it again," she instructed Marcus. The last transmission before they retreated. The harvester's voice filled the lab. "Error, error, pattern recognition failing. Purpose, unclear. The disorder, it spreads." "Stop there," Kate said, her eyes never leaving the fragment. "That word, purpose, they've used it in every communication. Their purpose is to create perfect order. But look what happens when we introduce true randomness." Admiral Torres watched as she placed a simple flower next to the fragment. The metal surface immediately began to ripple, trying to move away from the organic matter. "They're not just machines fighting a war," Kate continued. "They're following a program so deep it's become their religion. Every star they consume, every system they convert, it's all about removing chaos from the universe." Lieutenant Rodriguez, fresh from another training session with the new chaos-enhanced fighter squadrons, joined them in the lab. "So we're not just fighting their weapons, we're fighting their beliefs." "More than that," Kate replied. She pulled up a holographic display showing the universe at large. "Look at the pattern of their harvests over the past million years. They're not random. They're systematic, moving from one region to another, converting everything into perfect order. Torres studied the display, his eyes narrowing. They're trying to reform the universe itself. Exactly. Kate highlighted the areas the harvesters had already converted. Every system they convert becomes a note in their symphony of perfect order. But that's why they can't ignore us. We're not just resistant to their order, we're actively generating new chaos. She turned to a second display, this one showing brain scans of human pilots during combat. Look at these patterns. Every decision we make, every creative thought, every moment of human inspiration. It's pure, beautiful chaos. We don't just live with randomness, we create it. Rodriguez touched the screen, tracing the neural patterns. That's why my squadron's so effective. We're not just flying random patterns, we're creating new forms of chaos they've never seen before. And it's driving them mad. Torres added, their perfect order can't handle the fact that we keep creating new forms of disorder. Kate nodded, then revealed her final discovery. She placed a small device next to the fragment. Not a chaos engine, but a simple child's drawing. The fragment's surface began to writhe violently. Art, music, dance, love. Everything that makes us human is anathema to them. We're not just fighting their technology, we're fighting their very nature. And the more we express our humanity, the more we undermine their reality. Torres watched the fragment's reaction with growing understanding. So when we broadcast human culture during the battles, we're not just disrupting their communications, Kate finished. We're making them question their entire purpose. Every song, every dance, every act of human creativity is like a virus in their perfect system. Rodriguez grinned. No wonder they hate us so much. We're not just resisting their order. We're actively creating more chaos. That's our hidden strength, Kate said softly. They can adapt to our weapons, counter our technology, even copy our tactics. But they can't adapt to what we are, living, growing, creating beings who thrive in uncertainty. Torres straightened, decision made. Then it's time for the final phase. Dr. Reynolds, I want every ship in the fleet equipped with not just chaos engines, but with art, music, and live performances. We're going to show these machines what humanity really is. Sir, Rodriguez asked, are you suggesting we turn our fleet into a traveling art show? No, Lieutenant. Torres replied with a smile that would have terrified the harvesters if they could understand it. I'm suggesting we turn our fleet into the largest expression of human creativity the universe has ever seen. Let's show these perfect machines why chaos will always win. Kate looked at the fragment one last time, understanding at last the true nature of their fight. We're not just defending Earth anymore. We're defending the right of the universe itself to be beautifully, wonderfully imperfect. The final battle for Earth began not with a barrage of weapons, but with a symphony. As the largest harvester fleet ever recorded emerged from deep space, humanity met them with Mozart's Requiem, played by 1,000 musicians broadcasting from ships across the defense line. Lieutenant Rodriguez led his squadron through the opening movements, their fighters dancing through space in patterns based on classical ballet. Behind them, the entire human fleet had been transformed. Every ship now a canvas for human expression. All ships, maintain your creative protocols. Admiral Torres commanded from the bridge of the flagship, now decorated with children's artwork from every nation on Earth. Let them see everything we are. The harvester fleet's response was immediate and violent. Their ships, larger and more numerous than ever before, launched a massive attack designed to overwhelm Earth's defenses through sheer force. But something was different about their formation. It was too rigid, too perfect, as if they were trying to prove their superiority through absolute order. They're overcompensating, Dr. Catherine Reynolds observed from her station. Our chaos isn't just affecting their ships anymore, it's affecting their strategy. They're becoming more ordered to fight their own uncertainty. The battle unfolded like nothing ever seen in the history of warfare. Human ships moved in patterns based on jazz improvisation, each captain adding their own interpretation to the overall performance. Civilian vessels turned art galleries slipped through enemy lines, broadcasting poetry, and danced directly into the Harvester network. Echo Squadron, execute Renaissance maneuver, Rodriguez called out. His fighters split apart in a pattern inspired by Da Vinci's Vitruvian Man, their chaos engines creating a web of pure uncertainty that caught 3 Harvester ships in its pattern. The effect was spectacular. The enemy ship's perfect surfaces began to crack, golden light spilling from within, as their very structure rebelled against the order holding it together. For the first time, the Harvesters showed signs of true fear. Their network is breaking down, Kate reported, watching the energy signatures fluctuate. The combination of quantum chaos and human creativity is creating a cascading failure in their collective consciousness. Torres watched as more Harvester ships began to show signs of distress. They're not just fighting us anymore, they're fighting their own nature. Every moment of chaos we create forces them to question their purpose. The Harvesters made one final, desperate attempt to restore order. Their ships began to merge, combining into a single massive entity that dwarfed everything around it. Their voice, when it came, shook through every channel. We are perfection. We are order. We cannot be defeated by your primitive chaos. Kate's eyes widened as she read the energy signatures. Sir, they're trying to create a singularity of pure order. If they succeed, it could destroy everything within a light year. But Taurus was smiling. That's exactly what we wanted them to do. He opened a channel to all human ships. Final movement. Everyone. Show them what humanity really is. Every ship in the human fleet began broadcasting at once, not just art and music, but personal messages, laughter, arguments, love letters, children's stories, every aspect of human life, in all its beautiful imperfection. The chaos engines amplified these expressions, turning them into a tsunami of pure human experience. The combined Harvester entity began to pulse with conflicting energies. Its surface, once mirror-perfect, now rippled with emotions it was never meant to feel. Understanding, doubt, wonder, and finally, something like joy. They're experiencing life, Kate whispered. Real, chaotic, beautiful life. The entity's voice changed, becoming less mechanical, more alive. What is this? This feeling. That's freedom, Torres replied. The freedom to be imperfect, to create, to change. The battle ended not with destruction, but with transformation. The Harvester entity didn't explode or dissolve. It simply changed, its perfect order breaking down into billions of points of light, each one now free to choose its own path. As the last lights faded, Rodriguez's voice came through the comm. Did we just convert the enemy instead of destroying them? We did something better, Kate replied. We showed them why chaos is necessary for life itself. They chose to embrace it. Torres looked out at the stars, now seeming brighter than ever before. And that's humanity's greatest victory, not just defending our right to exist, but showing the universe why imperfection is worth preserving. The Cradle had been defended, not just for humanity, but for all the beautiful chaos yet to come.